Hi, Julianne.
Hi, how are you?
So great to see you.
Nice to see you. It's been a long time.
Yes. Where are you calling in from today?
I'm in Long Island, in Montauk, New York, where I've been pretty much for the whole year. Right when when New York City shut down, my family and I came out here, and we've been here on and off. You know, I've been back in the city a little bit and been working in different locations, but mostly in this house actually.
Oh, how beautiful. So beautiful there.
I have a place to go. And both of my, I was just going to say, both in school. One is at Northwestern, one is in grad school at NYU, and like all of you guys, they're doing it all virtually.
So we're all in the same boat here, the virtual boat. So as you know, I will ask you just a series of very general questions, and you could ask them answer them as you wish, or not. But my first question, if you're ready.
Yeah.
What was your first aesthetic awakening?
God, my first awakening. Well, you started with a hard one.
Yeah.
That's my first aesthetic awakening. I don't know. I mean, I think that my mother was a person who had a very strong sense of the way things should look, or, you know, she was interested in seeing. She would always, you know, notice things and point them out to us, and related things, I think, a lot to books and to art and to design. And she just had a way of, I think, even being in a room with her, the way she arranged furniture and what she cared about. She she made everything. She sewed. She kind of was sort of, I guess it is, she would be sort of a design addict, I suppose you'd call it now. But at the time, it was pretty unusual. People didn't care about. People didn't sew their own slip covers and stuff like that. So I think he always guided us. My parents were very young. They were married when they were 19 and 20, and I was born right after that. So they were always in school. They never had any money. So everything was about doing anything was for free. You know, you went to the library, you went to a museum that was nearby. We didn't even really go to the movies because the movies cost money, So, but she was the one, I think, who directed my aesthetics always.
So who were some of your early influences when you were coming of age, as that inspired you at an early age?
Well, I mean, in terms of, I certainly didn't have any expectation that I would be an actor. I wasn't, we didn't, like I said, we didn't go to the movies when I was a little kid. We didn't, I watched what I was on television, but that certainly felt, kind of far away, but I did read a lot. That's what I did for entertainment. And because we moved so often, because my dad was in the Army, I didn't always have a social structure that was intact. So it was up to me to kind of figure it out. I would go I'd be that kid who spent all the time at the library because I didn't have anything else to do. So I was influenced mostly by books, and by narrative, and I spent most of my time pretending. Right. I realize when I think back to some of the things that my sister and I are a year and 3 days apart, and we've always played together. And I think back to some of the things that we did, and I realized it was almost all of it was based on American life. I wasn't what you call an outdoorsy kid. I think certainly given my, what I look like, I couldn't spend time in the sun. I wasn't athletic. So all of my activity was about reading and pretending. So I don't know that as I got older, I could do more things on my own. And this is a kind of weird transition. Actually, we moved to Alaska when I was 10, which was, and it was kind of crazy because my dad had been in law school in Nebraska. And then after Vietnam, he got out and went to law school, and then went into private practice in Juneau, Alaska, of all places. And it was such a strange place. It was so different in those days. Yeah. And I had a tremendous amount of freedom. And at that point, what was interesting is that was the first time I started going to the movies on my own, because I could take the bus at 10, which is kind of shocking when you think about it. But I could take the bus every Saturday, and every Saturday they changed the movie. And so like one Saturday it would be a Disney movie like Aristocats, and then it would be like this Solzhenitsyn movie, A Day in the Life of Ivan Denisovich, which was crazy. So I would see that one Saturday. So whoever this person was who was curating this stuff, like there was a Cassavetes movie called Minnie and Moskowitz that I saw at 10 years old. So I think suddenly I was sort of bombarded by all this, I loved narrative so much and I loved books. And I think I was, bombarded with a cinematic narrative that was probably affecting me more than I realized. Because now, of course, when I look back, I think like, oh my gosh, I think my interest in narrative was shaped back then.
Was there a particular movie that changed your life that you could sort of?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, there was, but it was much later. So I think after, when I went to college in Boston, those were the years when revival houses were everywhere. You could see absolutely anything, anywhere. And it's kind of a shame it's all gone away, because once again, what we're missing, I think, is curation. So you'd go to Bible houses and you'd see these kind of, magnificent things. And I remember seeing Robert Altman's movies for the first time. And somehow I made it, entirely through the 70s and never had even heard of Robert Altman. And I saw, I saw everything. I saw Nashville, I saw Brewster McCloud. But when I saw Three Women, I was like, what? I was like, who is that? Who is that storyteller? What's that point of view? Who's that person? Like, that's the kind of work that I want to do. That's what it was the first time. And this is actually after being in college and seeing Truffaut and Godard and Fassbinder and everything. But for some reason with Altman, suddenly I was like, oh, that's what a point of view is. That's what a storyteller is. That's the kind of work that I want to do. I want to do work that's that direct. So I think it was that. And when I later worked with Bob and told him that, he was like, what? All right. Yeah. But so getting to work with him was really, honestly, looking back, it was unbelievable that I had that opportunity. I mean, to work with extraordinary artists like that.
Do you have a sense of what it is about his movies that just moved you so, or was it just like? It's
the humanity, I mean, and the seemingly randomness of his point of view. It's never random. I mean, people always ask about Bob. They always ask about improv, and they say like, "Oh, it's all made up, right? It's all improvisation." I'm like, no, not at all. There was always a script, and he would encourage improv, but he'd have you work, and people would say, actors are not writers. Some actors are, but most of them are terrible writers. So improv is usually a mess. So you do these little improvs, and Bob would say, okay, like, now you say what you said there, but you don't say that line. You said that line you said before. So he created it. So there was also something in the way that he cast people. He really did cast you for some. You never knew what it was. It was something that he wanted that was intrinsically you. He loved everything that was really, really human, and he loved that collective experience and being together every day and creating that work and watching dailies. And he was as far from corporate as you could get. And you see, you feel it in his movies, you feel it in the language and the sound. The very first time I was shooting with him, I was very worried about overlapping sound. He was like, where have you been working? I don't care about it.
So this might be like a difficult question to answer, like in a literal sense, but do you see the work you do as an actor in any way autobiographical? Like, does it reflect any aspect of who you are and where you came from and your presence as a,
Yeah. I mean, I feel like, one of the questions that we get, I think, as actors all the time is like, what character is the most like you? And I'm like, all of them?
Yeah.
They all are. And that's the beauty of acting, is that you are I'm always looking for what is most essential in a character, and usually the most essential thing about that character is the most universal thing. So that means that's something that I share, but that's something that everybody shares. So people are able to go to the movies and say, oh my God, that's me. Like, how did she know about me? It's like, I don't know about you, but I know that about me. So I'm going, so it's my job to find a way to reveal myself in kind of the most basic way possible, the most complete way, so that people are able to see themselves in me. So in that sense, it's all autobiography, because you have to, it's this kind of melding of you and a character. This idea that you can sense it. I think people can sense it when you watch a movie and an actor hasn't quite inhabited something. It feels off. It feels like an impersonation. You're just like, but when it's seamless, you feel like, oh my God, that person is alive.
So how would you describe the line between yourself and a created persona? Like, how do you negotiate that?
Well, it's your intellect, really. That's where you delineate it. Talk to acting students too, I always say that, well, your job is to do all the preparation, to do all the work that you need to do on the script in order to understand it, to understand the character, to understand what's happening in the scene, know your lines backwards and forwards, know everything that's going on, so that when you are in front of the character, in front of the camera, it can happen to you on camera. Your feeling will happen, and the camera will capture it. But at the same time that it's almost like you tricked your body and your mind somewhat into believing that something is truly happening to you, so you can have a real emotional response. At the same time, your intellect knows that's not true, because your intellect knows that there's a lens there, and there are grips there, and there's the operator, and there's there's production design behind you, and that actor, the other actor acting on the other side, and you have to see, and if something like falls out of the sky is going to hit you on the head, you better notice it, all of that stuff. So it's like you have this, your brain is always working, which is what's so exciting for me actually about screen acting, is that there's this kind of total immersion and this way of tricking yourself into really believing what's happening and really, really feeling something. But at the same time, your brain is saying to yourself, like, this is not you. This is you created this. So it is like I was talking about before about being a kid. It's deep, deep pretending. It's this weird, and really the sensation is not very different if you think back to when you were a kid, and if you really did enjoy imaginary play, about how there's some kind of expressiveness that happens when you're a kid and you do that. But even when you're a little kid and you say to your parents that you're a superhero, that you're not.
Right.
You're just inhabiting that. So yeah, it's the difference between, I think, your physical body, your emotional body, and your intellectual mind.
So what is the least favorite part of the artistic process for you? Business. So tell us about that. Like, what about it exactly?
I hate it. I hate talking to oh my God. I hate, listen, I have a lot of great people in my life who that I work with and who help me find work and negotiate for me and that kind of business. But honest to God, I just can't, the idea of like, well, this is supposed to go first quarter, and we told them that you don't have that slot available, and we're gonna have to put it to a second slot, and well, they don't, wait, we think Netflix is gonna do it, but I don't know, they might try to shot. I'm just like, oh, stop. It's just so boring. It's so boring. And then beyond that, then there's the whole kind of process of development, which I really don't like too, where everybody sort of weighs in on the script. And when you're going through a studio or a production company, suddenly there are all these people who are not directly involved in the actual creation of the project. They're not the director, they're not the actors, they are studio executives or whatever, offering notes and ideas. And I'm like, this is crazy. Then there's something about the project that feels like it's an object. It's this object, it's this product that then they're making, which in fact it is. So that I also loathe. And I hate PR. Doesn't everybody? Like, because then once again, then you're marketing that object. Then
Right.
it's like, oh, wait a second, it's not this thing that we were doing that we created. Now we have to go out and sell it somehow.
Right.
And of course, it's a reality. So it makes me sound like a baby, by saying like, I don't want to do it. But I don't think that's why any of us goes. We don't go into these things because we want to market something, because we want to develop it, or we want to talk about the back end, or that's not. I don't think that's what interests us as artists.
So what is the part you like best then?
The doing it,
The doing it.
And this is the thing that's really surprised me, actually, is that I thought that my interest would wane. I thought that the longer I did it, that maybe I'd be like, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't know if it like presses the right buttons for me. But it's actually gotten better and more interesting, and the work has gotten deeper and kind of nuttier. And I feel like there's always somewhere else that I have to go with it. And so actually being on the set and being with everybody that I'm working with, from the hair and makeup people, to the PA, to the grips, to the, to the boom operator, the director, the camera operator, everybody, because we are all doing it together, the other actors. So it's like it's this kind of crazy beehive of creativity and activity. And so actually being on the set and figuring it out is just,
well, who's your imagined audience?
I don't, that's an interesting question. I don't know that when I'm working on something that I think about the audience, because I almost feel like that's like, sometimes I almost feel like that's something that happens at the end when you're doing marketing for something. Like, who's the audience for this, right?
Right.
But making something, I don't know you know that. And I think you want to. It's great if you can try to make something without this idea that you're targeting it towards someone. You're making something that's authentic and human. And back to Altman's films, I don't think he ever thought about an audience. He was just doing something that was kind of magnificent storytelling and a real and revelation about what the human experience is. So I don't feel like it was ever being pitched anywhere. So I think that's what's interesting about all art, about film and theater and visual art and stuff. You don't know who's going to respond to it, but the collective experience, this idea that we have even a collective unconscious, that we're all kind of going towards something. That's what's exciting, because you go that specificity that, back to me talking about wanting people to recognize themselves in a performance. When I was a little kid and I first started reading books, and I saw this with my children when they were very little, and you see this with other kids too. They'll read a book and they'll say, how do they know that about me?
Right.
Which is so beautiful, and I can remember thinking that too when I was a kid. I'm like, wow, I read this book and this person knows this, but that's what, like I said, that connection that art can make. That's why we keep going to museums and we keep going to plays and reading books and going to movies, because there's that reflection and that identification always.
So is there a work of art or a movie that makes you cry? I'm sure there is, but.
Well, Our Town.
Yes.
Really.
Yeah.
You escape that. And it's you sit there in the audience with Our Town, no matter where you see it. If you see a high school production of it, or you see a Broadway production of it, or whatever, or reading it, and it's so simple. And there's a part of you that thinks like, oh, come on, this isn't gonna get to me. This is not gonna get to me this time. And it slays you every single time. It's so simple and so harrowing and really perfect. And it always makes me cry.
How has success affected your work? Success.
I think it's made it possible for me to have more work.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is, you know, I think that's I don't know what that's like for a visual artist, you know. I mean, maybe that there's that same you know,
Definitely the same. Yeah.
yeah. So the thing that the wonderful thing about it is that there's this possibility. You go like, oh wow, you mean because I had success doing this one job, you're going to allow me to do another job, and then hopefully another and another and another. And I think that we all feel the same way, that it could go away, you know. And actually, whenever anybody says, you know, I'm always like, well, I'm worried this won't happen, that won't happen, or it will all just disappear. And they'll be like, why? And I'm like, well, because it's not unprecedented.
Right. Right.
You
And what have you learned from failure?
What have I learned? Like, that stuff doesn't work sometimes, you know.
Yeah.
It's really interesting to fail, to not have something ignite, you know, to have it fall flat. And especially when you're acting and you have to like stay in it, there's nothing that you can do. You can't walk away from it, you know, because usually you find out that you've failed. It's not like when, I think with a painting, I don't know, it's like maybe you're feeling like it's not working, you can kind of throw it away or something, or a photograph. But if I'm in the middle of a performance and I'm like flailing, I still have to finish it. I still have to find a way to get through it, to make it survive. And it's horrible. But then you say, well,
Yeah.
that didn't work. I won't, you know, you know, then you try to kind of like find a way to mitigate it, you know, so it won't happen in the future with something else. And then you also learn too. I think you learn, maybe that's not for you. You know, maybe you try something and it's an utter failure because you're really, really uncomfortable in the middle of it. So you go, all right, so I won't do that. I won't do that kind of movie, or I won't, you know, I'm not particularly comfortable. Like, I don't love being on stage. I really don't. And that was something that was a surprise to me, that I didn't think that, like being an actor, I think I just came out of high school theater and middle school theater and that kind of stuff. So I thought I was going to continue on the theater path. And I didn't realize that I was much more interested in film acting than I was in that sense of having a live audience there. But it took some time. It took some time for me doing some plays going like, I don't like it.
And what is it about that you don't like as opposed to movies? Is it?
I think that it is that sense that I was talking to some performers about this. I was talking about relaxation, and I said, you know, you have to find a way to. I said, everything they tell you in acting school about being relaxed is true. It takes probably 25 years to really understand that. And once you go, oh my God, I really do need to be relaxed. I really need to be available to all of this. I said, so there's that, number one. And I said, another trick that I use, and that's the truth for me too, is that I know that everybody on that set, that we're all invested in the same thing, you know. So my circle of concentration can be here with the work that I'm doing in another actor, but I can also widen it out to see everybody around me, especially as I get to know people on the crew, so that I know that, you know, Clay, the boom operator, is with me as tightly as the dolly grip is, as is the director, as is the IT guy that, you know, in the tent. And, you know, so it's like, it's that sense of everybody being in it with you, which I really, really love. I think that in the theater, I just don't feel that way, because I feel like the audience is that they're watching something. They're not part. There are a lot of actors who say like, oh my gosh, there's this wonderful symbiotic relationship between an actor and an audience. And for me, like I said, it's more challenging for me to feel that. I feel that, you know, when I'm working on film.
So you've worked with so many great directors. I'm just pointing out, like, obviously Todd Haynes and Paul Thomas Anderson. Do you have any stories or anything you want to say about those particular creative process?
Oh,
with those
well,
great filmmakers.
I've been so lucky. I mean, I've been so lucky with the people that I've worked with. And I think that you know, people always say what makes a great director, you know, and I'm like, well, they have to, they're people who have a strong point of view and story to tell, but then they're able to communicate that to the people that they're working with, you know, so that it comes through absolutely every aspect of that film. So my job as an actor is to be able to interpret that, is to know from, in this case, they're both writer directors. So it was pretty, for me, it was obvious in the language. They were able to communicate what they wanted to be with the dialogue they'd written. And so it's like, you can hear it, you know, you can sort of feel, you hear the rhythm, you sort of see, you know, you can look at the way they frame a shot and understand what they're trying to say. So there's so much information in the work that they're doing. So my job is to bring their vision to life, you know, through my work. But they're, a great director is specific, you know, there's a reason, there's a reason that book is on the table and not a magazine, you know, they've chosen it. They're not, I mean, I've seen people say like, no, not that, you know, that's not, you know, it's like, how are you, you know, everything is a signifier in film. Everything's a signifier in life, right? You know, it's like, that's one of those interesting things where you're like, okay, what do I see? What does this mean? What is this person communicating to me? And so a great director is doing that in the film, and it's thrilling. It's thrilling as an actor. It's like being held, you know. I once had a director say to me, I was like, well, tell me, I said, I said, what's the plan today? You know, like, what's the shot list? He's like, well, what do you feel like doing? And I'm like, I will know what I feel like doing when I get the shot list.
Yes.
I was like, I don't know. I mean, I'm like, where's the frame? You know, where's the point of view? I need to know, how do you see this? So I know how to perform it. And I love that specificity. My gosh, it's so exciting.
Just rewatched the other day I think one of my absolute favorite films, and it's still so powerful and relevant to the moment, which is Safe.
Oh,
Such a great movie, and it's amazing to watch it in the moment we're in, actually.
well,
Really.
I know, beautiful. I mean, I had never read anything like that in my life. I was, you know, really very much at the beginning of my film career, and I was doing a movie in Pittsburgh, and somebody sent me the script, and I was like, how is this available? Like, isn't there somebody famous who's going to do this? You know, I was like, I have to audition for this. I can't believe it. And I flew home, and I could only hear it one way, just like literally one way. And so I can remember going to the audition, which was on Broadway and Prince, I think, of all places. And I walked in, and we had these 3 scenes, and I just said hi, and he was like, hi. And I sat down and I did it, and he was like, okay. I said, okay, do you want me to read the next one? He was like, yeah, okay. And I read the next one, and he was like, okay. I said, okay, read the next one. He's like, okay. Then I read the next one. I was like, all right, okay. He's like, okay, bye. And that was it. Like, that's all we said. And evidently I walked out, and he turned to our producer and said, that's Carol White.
Wow.
So it was weird. It was like Todd and I just saw it precisely the same way. And then we've continued to have that relationship. That's what's weird, is that there's something in the work that he does and the work that I do that just kind of aligns. And it's very, very easy. There's actually really something that was funny. The one disagreement that we had on Safe, I mean, literally the one, was it's when I'm in bed and my husband comes in and he puts his arms around me, and I start to go like this. You think I'm crying, and then I back up and I vomit.
Yes.
And so Todd kept saying, okay. He goes, I want you, okay, so, and you back up, and I want you to throw your head this way and just like, and so you vomit that way. And I was like, what? He was like, just go like that. I'm like, no. And he's like, well, why can't you do that? I said, because that's not how I saw it. And he's like, well, that's not how I saw it either, but they're all worried about getting the stuff on the carpet, and we're trying to get it on the sheets. And I was like, oh, is that it? I mean, that was literally the only time we disagreed, because he was just trying to accommodate, you know, the shag carpeting or something. But we laughed hard, but I don't think we've ever had a disagreement about how something should be performed, because it's just, I don't know, his stuff is just so precise. And that movie was, I mean, very early in independent film, and for $1 million.
Wow.
And during the Northridge earthquake, I mean, that was what was crazy about that in '94.
Wow.
And also a movie that I wasn't at Sundance when it was there, and I called my manager and I said, like, you know, how did it go? And she's like, sweetie, I don't know how to tell you, but people walked out. It's a flop. And so that was a movie that was so poorly received. And then by the end of the decade, everybody was like, this is one of the best movies of the '90s. So you never know.
Absolutely. Do you have a favorite performance? I mean, it's so hard to say, but is there one that you feel like you're just like, oh yeah?
No, I mean, I have some, I have stinkers that it would be easier for me to go like, well, that one stunk, or don't like it. Or my son, this is actually what's really funny, is my children, of course, have not, I mean, children are never very interested in their parents' work, nor should they be. So they should, you know, their relationship is to you as a parent. So they've also seen very few of my films because so many of them are really adult, and you don't want to, you know, do that to kids. But I remember he told me, he's like seen nothing, even the ones that he probably could see, but he saw this movie called Eagle Eye, and 3 times. And in Eagle Eye, I'm the voice of the computer. I'm like not like, you know, it was a job I did just because it was an easy job and it was a nice paycheck and stuff like that. I'm like, I said, you haven't seen Far From Heaven, but you saw Eagle Eye 3 times? Really?
So what's going to happen to movies, do you think? Like, will there be movies in movie theaters or what's
good.
gonna?
Yeah, it definitely doesn't look great, I have to say, personally. I think that experience, I think everything's changing so rapidly. I think people's habits have changed too. When we have access to all of these movies, you know, suddenly at home, everyone's got an enormous TV or a kind of a screen or something. So just there's not this urgency to go out and see whatever is the latest, especially when they have day and date releases. I think that probably the theatrical experience will be saved for these great big tentpole movies, these big, you know,
Superhero movies and such.
Yeah, but I think more intimate films and certainly European films, and you know, I think those are going to end up being the ones that we see on streamers.
Yeah,
and it sucks. It's. I mean, when the ArcLight closed, I saw that in the paper the other day. I was shocked.
Yeah.
So if you feel like if Los Angeles can't keep a movie theater like that going, then you really do need to wonder, you know. And it's a shame. Like I said, it's the thing that I have missed, because when I look back and I think about like what my film education consisted of, and like how much curation I had with that little movie theater in Alaska every week, how much curation I had in Boston with all of those revival houses, you know, that's where I received it as a cinematic education. And if that doesn't exist anymore, that kind of curation, although, you know, now we're actually seeing it online more because people are these categories and algorithms, and you can kind of look up the kind of films that you want to see. So maybe it is available in a sense.
Have you seen anything that you really loved recently? A show of some sort?
This little movie called Miss Juneteenth, and it's called Miss Juneteenth, and
okay.
it's a really beautifully directed and beautifully performed, and it's a filmmaker named Channing Godfrey-Peebles, and she's young, and I actually thought that given her name Channing, I thought it was a man, that I googled right away. And it has a performance by this woman named Nicole Beharie, who actually won Best Actress at the Gotham Awards, and she was shocked when she won, because she won over Frances and everybody. And anyway, it's so beautifully observed. It's so gorgeous. And it's about this small town in Texas and a single mother and her experience having won this beauty pageant years ago called Miss Juneteenth, which is the day that the slaves were freed. And then trying to get her daughter to enter this pageant too. But everything that Channing does is feels so personal, because it is, you know, she grew up in a town like this, she knows these people, and it just jumped off the screen. And I was really disappointed that it didn't get more attention and more play. I mean, I think she's definitely going to have a great career, and she'll get a touch as a filmmaker. But I was kind of curious. I was like, why haven't we heard about this? Why hasn't there been kind of more behind it? But it's a movie that I would really recommend.
Well, absolutely. So my very last question is, what advice would you give the students in this moment?
Yeah, I know. I mean, it's like, I think it sounds so ridiculous when people say, like, really lean into who you are and what you do. But I think that's the most important thing that you can do. A girlfriend of mine, her daughter is working on a film right now, and she's having a really hard time. She's young, and she's one of her first performances. And she said to me that she felt that the director didn't like the choice that she was making. I said, maybe the director's wrong. You know, he's right.
Yeah.
It's like when something really feels right to you as an actor, you know, or as an artist, then maybe you're right. Sometimes you hear a lot of voices saying to you, oh, you should do it this way, you should do it that way. And the minute it starts to feel uncomfortable or untrue, or off track, like, listen to yourself. You know, you are probably right. You know, I mean, we've gotten to the places that we've gotten to. All of you have gotten to where you've gotten to in this program and these programs, because you followed your instincts and because you have an ability, you know, that. And so it's like, so as much as you want to be guided, as much as you want to learn from people, you know, also you learn as much as possible, expose yourself to absolutely everything, and then really trust your instincts about something. You know, I think that for me, like, I look back and I think I always loved to read. From the time I was a little kid, I was a great reader and I read voraciously. And now people will say to me, how do you make these choices with, you know, how have you been so lucky with your choices? And I'm like, I'm a great reader. Like, I recognize it. Like, I know because I've been reading since I was a little kid, what's good, what appeals to me, what lights me up. So I have to lean into my own expertise in order to do something that's going to bring me to somebody else, you know. So to know that you are on the right track. I mean, my God, if you know, for all of you who've gotten all the way here, that's a long way to go. That's a bold choice to make. You know, to suddenly say, like, I'm going to choose to explore this stuff, and I want to be an artist. So to rely on yourself that way.
Great answer.
Oh, good.
And thank you so much for spending the time. We really appreciate it, all of us, and to take that time. And so much great things were said, and I really very much appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Well, thank you, and good luck to everybody, all of you. Thank you so much. Thanks, guys. Bye.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.